I was born in Welland, Ontario. Both my parents are now deceased, but my mom separated from my dad, I think, in the 4th grade. We moved to Richmond Hill and Thornhill, my mom and I. And then I spent a couple years in high school in Barrie. Anyway, I went to Seneca for radio and television broadcasting. I wanted to learn how to shoot a camera. I wanted to be that person behind the camera that you're looking at right now. But I fell in love with editing. Loved editing, the idea of piecing pictures and music and sound together to tell a story. And when I graduated, I got hired at Much as an editor at Much Music. Doesn't really exist now, but since 1984 in Canada, Much Music was a national music video channel, and with music videos and interviews with music artists. And I was an editor, and then eventually fell into an on-air position hosting a country music show on Much. And then I did that started at Much as an editor in '88, became a VJ in '92, video jockey, being on the air, and did that until 2000 when we launched Much More Music, a little bit of an older version of Much Music, and did that until 2005. I just sort of didn't want to do music journalism anymore. And since then, I worked in Edmonton hosting a morning show for City TV, and then in Ottawa for 6 years, becoming a weather anchor and a morning show host. And then I've been in Kingston for the past 11 years, doing pretty much what you do, interview a lot of local people, shining a spotlight on charity here in Kingston. And yeah, I've been doing that for 11 years, and I can honestly say I'm having the best time of my career. So yeah, my career spanned 35 years. I think it took this long to finally find a place
where you can settle and where you can be happy.
And a duty and be happy, yeah. Which is why it's called a happy has-been. Everyone has a story. I think everyone is worthy of a book. I don't necessarily think my story is any more interesting than anyone else's. I've just had the opportunity to do it. And that's based on the push was for years being told by people, wow, you should write a book. You have so many stories. And like I said, everyone has a story. Everyone has got interesting stories that'll make them cry or laugh or be surprised or you can learn from. But this year specifically, 2023, I realized it's been 35 years that I've been in this business. During COVID, actually, I started being a guest on a lot of people's podcasts, talking about the 90s or music, and it's just seemed during COVID, a lot of these podcasts kept coming up, and I kept on being guests in different podcasts, and I started, things started coming back, a lot of stories. Plus, I used to be a columnist for the Whig Standard, talking about my life and my career. And so I think I started writing it at the end of 2021. I just started writing stuff down. Next thing I know, without the intention of writing a book, I have chapters, and then stuff is coming back to me, and I'm looking at old columns and old interviews, and I just started writing. It took about a year, just over a year to finish, and then when I finished it, I realized, I have a book. This is weird. The hardest thing for me was what to keep out. Some personal things. I talk about death in there, the death of my parents, the death of 3 older brothers. I talk about some reckless years in my 20s and 30s in Toronto. And my fiance, Amanda, she read the first draft and said, ooh, I wouldn't put that in, that's just too personal. And I thought about it, and I thought, okay, there are some things that are too personal for people to read in a book. Maybe they don't need to know certain things.
Yeah.
But that to me was the hardest. And even when it was done, and back and forth with their editor and their publisher, I realized I still have a few more stories that I haven't told. So I started writing some more stuff down, and someday in a year from now, a year and a half from now, if the publisher wants to revisit the idea, edition number 2, with more pictures, more stories, more of whatever hopefully people will enjoy from this book. And I'm hoping people will. And the idea to me is also if you have no idea who the heck I am, if you've never seen me on the air interview anyone, if you have no idea, what I've done in my life, you can still pick it up and read it and find it interesting. There's a lot of stories, a lot of things that came back to me, a lot of things I have never told people before. And I wanted that element of that book in there. But I also just didn't want it to be the meanderings of some guy saying, hey, look what I did, look who I met, listen to these funny stories. I wanted there to be some meat, some kind of takeaway for the reader. They're going to invest a few days reading this book, hopefully, and come away with something. And I just started thinking, well, what are the things that I've learned in my life or doing this job? And I just started writing stuff down again and forming it. And that's why the subtitle is Exciting Times and Lessons Learned, is because I wanted to share some of the things that I've learned, important things to me. Like if you visit the Caribbean, wear sunscreen. It's true. It's true. It's a very important lesson. In India one time, this is a lesson, never toss a banana at a tree full of monkeys. Never do that, because they'll come down and they'll chase you. They want more bananas. That's a lesson I learned. But also simple things, little life lessons that we all could learn from and hopefully learned along the way in life. And it's simple things like love one another, support one another, inclusion, compassion, inclusivity, elevate people as much as you can, and elevate everyone around you, coworkers, a stranger on the street. All these things will make you a happy person, a happier person. And it's the simplest things as well. And I think that's one of the messages in the book, and one of the lessons learned is just that idea of loving one another and supporting one another. Some of them come from Christ's teachings. And ideally, love one another. It's as simple as that. And be tolerant of one another. Support each other. One of the most important things to me that I've realized over the years is perfect circles. And I don't play any instruments, I'm not a musician, but I've loved music since kindergarten and followed music. I used to look at album covers and, pore over pictures, and got into, who produced records even. It's always been a big thing for me. So growing up and loving music, obviously having pictures of different artists in my locker in school or on my notebook, or on posters in my bedroom, or buying music, or going to see a show as a teenager, and then years later, interviewing these people, sitting down and bonding with them, sometimes in Toronto, sometimes in LA, sometimes in New York, sometimes in England. And to me, it's always those perfect circles where after I'd realized, wow, that was so cool. It's a touchstone to my youth, almost. And so my career has been full of countless perfect circles.